this, as far as, talking about, burnout,
Yeah.
burnout, and how to survive, through these. And a lot of times people are tired. Let's get it right. People are tired too. I mean, and that's one of the mental health crises we deal with today is burnout. People are mentally exhausted, emotionally exhausted, right? Physically and sometimes spiritually exhausted as well. And they're not, they're just not really living. They're just surviving, because they're juggling bills, family
Yeah.
pressure, right?
Right.
Multiple jobs,
Right.
definitely parenting stress, relationship issues, which you just talked about as well, trauma, financial fear, and then community violence, and then uncertainty at times too. So sometimes that survival mode ends up being emotional exhaustion.
Yeah.
That's what it ends up being.
Absolutely. And then, and like you say, there's a ton of pressure on not just men and women to provide for children, to build a home, and that's real. You gotta produce, and sometimes that gets too much to bear.
Man, I mean, I just tell you, it's just talking. Some people have been arrested for years, not physically or emotionally. Some people, and that's terrible, really, because it tears you up. I remember when we, just this winter, we had got. And this is not a knock on this industry and anything, but we had just got into medical transport. Didn't know really much about it. It was just trying to, generate some income and also, create some jobs for others, right? Well, man, it was super, super stressful, right? And I found myself not even though I was sleeping, I wasn't. And I started, and I mean, I'm not the smartest person in the world, don't get me wrong. Memory's not bad. But then when I was, during that time, I had like mental blocks where I couldn't remember nothing at all. And it was just overload, right? And I was like, man, I can't remember that. And I knew it was coming on because it wasn't like I said, well, I'm not saying I don't forget things, don't get me wrong, but it's like I had to rely so much on my schedule, but I was even too tired to look at my phone to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
And I was just really tired and, and it's just not sleeping well. So I get it when it comes to, to being exhausted.
Right.
And getting that rest is so, so important. Getting that rest is so, so
Yeah.
important, right?
Right.
I mean, and that's, to me.
And that's another thing that they coincide with each other, sleep and mental health. Well, a lot of times when you're having mental health problems, untreated mental health problems, it affects your sleep. And it's a known fact that, if you don't get enough sleep, that affects your mental health. So again, it's all
Right.
tied together.
Yeah, and the burnout comes, and that's the thing, when we speak about it. Like I told you, I was. I was. And it was a different time for me because, like I said, I'm not really always used to that, right? I'm not, and that's the thing. But it affected so many things, on me, and I do. For me though, when we talk about spiritually, I really had to do a lot of. I know I did had to do a lot of praying. Because I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't go through the day. I really couldn't because it was like I told you, just blocks of just just going out. And so I was there, but I really wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
And that's what usually happens, because the pressure was just so much,
Right.
on me, and I just remembered that, that I can't. I've done it when I was a kid. I used to worry a lot, and I just tell you, at 12 years old, I worried about things that I had no control over, and so much my body broke down on me and my hair started falling out in patches because of it. Ulcer, right? At 12 years old, right? Thinking about these things now, it was a learning experience for me because now I don't. But I felt like I used to. That's what was kind of worrying to me because I felt like I did then. Just head spinning all the time,
Overwhelmed.
right? Overwhelmed, right? And it was one of those things. I did finally, get the help I needed as far as number one by praying and also by restructuring things to where it wasn't such a stress on me, right? And that was the thing. But a lot of people don't have that. They don't have. They're overworked, right? Sometimes overgiving, overthinking, overperforming because we have to, perform at a certain level. We believe in order to, stay relevant as far as within our jobs, and to know that, we care about it, and definitely, but also carrying responsibilities alone is hard. You know what I mean? It's hard.
Yeah. And I think that's another good point you made. You develop different ways to alleviate your stress. And that can be done through real ways in your work or in your living and your lifestyle habits. It's not just therapy. I personally believe that everybody would benefit from therapy, but there are other ways to help your mental health. And first of all, and that's kind of why we do this, is to talk to someone.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the step one.
Right.
A trusted friend or confidant. Talk about it.
Right.
And that you'd be surprised how much that actually helps. Because I wasn't that guy.
That's right. I mean, I think we can reach out, FMRS, Generations, Family Options, Life Strategies. I'm sure there's more, right? And so if I'm missed them, I'm sorry.
Right.
Get to asking people about some of these places that are right around here, right down the street from you, to get some help if you need that, right? Because if that burnout, if you don't do it, that's definitely feeling emotionally numb happens, loss of motivation. So basically, it's not. It appeared to look like people are being lazy. They're just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They're overwhelmed. They're overloaded, man. And that's
reached their limit,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. So and like I said, I had all those. I mean, really, I was forgetting everything, like I said before, brain fog. That's what I'm saying. The brain fog was real.
Right.
Just mentally overwhelmed. Constantly overthinking. I was a lot. There's a lot to it, and just feeling like. I mean, I remember the day, and it's like I said, well, this is not a knock on medical transport at all, but it wasn't. It wasn't an avenue that I'm glad I went down it, but it's not an avenue I probably would do again. But it was one of those things that it was a big relief when I knew we scaled it down to where we could manage it, and the anxiety went down. Exactly, it went down a lot.
Yeah, and that's that's part of, I think, maintaining a good mental health is knowing when to pump the brakes. Know when to take a little break. I had by the time I was 23, I had a mortgage and a baby, and was trying to raise her right and pay the bills, and seemingly it looked like I handled it just fine.
Right.
But that much pressure every day, and every day, I was to the point where if I don't put in 15 hours today, we're gonna be, and a lot of that was self-imposed, but it was real. To me, I felt it, and that's just too much pressure. That was too much pressure for me to carry at that time.
Right.
So I was definitely feeling the burnout, and back then I didn't use healthy coping strategies to deal with all that pressure, and now I'm thankful that and I feel like the stigma that was always attached to that prevented me from getting the help I needed, and so I'm just thankful that now we're getting away from that, and that's a healthier option. That's the options I use now.
But the silence, I think, hurts.
Exactly.
Not trying to segue into this show. Break the silence. Talk about it, right? Yeah. Don't just put, we talked about it in February. Okay, that's good. We'll be fine. We checked that. No, talk about it, because I think, the struggle we have is the shame that's attached to the struggle at times, and that's why I said, and many people, they not only battle like depression, they're battling anxiety, trauma, different things like that we talked about before. That's why the stigma, is something we're trying to break, because of society, how they label it. And I think it's getting better. I really believe that. It's getting better in the younger, in that some of the younger, circles is getting a lot better when it comes to that. And that's the thing, getting the mental health and understand. I know a lot of colleges have, definitely counseling on campus for these things as well. I mean, I know, personally, me and my daughter, things like that. I mean, reaching out for her to get these things to be, something she can go, kind of talk to somebody about some things. I mean, I don't seem to think that's weak. It's not crazy. Definitely, it's not. It's not unstable. I think that'll help, right?
Right. And it's good because more and more people that the most successful among us go routinely for some sort of therapy session, and they don't necessarily go because they feel like they have any certain mental health problem. They go because it actually helps their performance.
Right. That's the thing. I mean,
it's not only just a Band-Aid to help a problem. It's actually can be an enhancement.
Right. So they don't have to feel comfortable with pretending. They need to heal by breaking the silence, by speaking about some of the things that's going on with them. But it's still uncomfortable, and people still don't want to. And I think it's a fear of judgment. I really believe that it's a fear of judgment. And that's the thing. Because they don't want to be misunderstood or being embarrassed or or looking weak or losing respect. And it's not that. It's really treated different. And I get it, but to me, it's like I commend those who come up and kind of come up and want to handle their mental health. Mm-hmm. I do, but like I said, it's still looked at in certain circles. It's like what's that mean?
Absolutely.
I've heard. I'm sure you have heard. A lot of some of the athletes now coming out speaking about it.
And
right?
That's a great thing.
Right, but it's still on the backside.
Right,
of that,
they still get some backlash.
Right on the backside. Yeah. It's like but that's the thing. I don't get it. But people are they're more prone rather talk about their physical pain than they do their emotional pain, though.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because we accept, a broken arm.
Right.
We can see that. We can, we know that hurts.
Right.
But we can't feel that emotional hurt that person. We can't see it. But it's there. It's very real. And like you said, I think the more we break the silence, the more likely people are. I have seen it improve. And I'm thankful for that. But it does need to continue to improve.
Right. And sometimes I think strength is kind of misunderstood as well. Yeah. That not never crying or never struggling or, never showing emotion. That's the thing. I always say it's not funny, but when I used to umpire baseball, when some kid get hit by a baseball, don't rub it, don't rub it when they run down there. But I remember some kids did because it hurt. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with saying it hurt, man. That ain't make you just tough. You still, the thing is, regardless of not, you're still running.
Yep, you still out there.
Are you rubbing it? You still running
there.
That's the thing.
Right.
And that's the thing when we definitely talk about it. So we don't want to be an only in survival. We want to be healing as well.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of, what happens too. So that stigma does damage people, right? And it makes them, kind of isolate. But then it gives them other things, anxiety, depression, different things like that, the shutdown. Yeah. One thing you mentioned, that self-medicating, substance abuse.
Absolutely.
Right? Right. A relationship problem, self-harm, like you said before, and suicidal risk. And that's what you don't want. You really don't want that. Right. And that's the thing, because silence doesn't relieve the pain it doesn't remove it. No. What did it do? It just only hides it still. But that's why you gotta get it out and talk about it. Yeah. I really believe that.
And I think it's important for everyone to also keep mental health awareness at the forefront of their mind as we go about our day dealing with our coworkers, people we bump into at the store. Everybody's dealing with something, and maybe I thought you cut me off in line at the register. Well, I didn't know you were in a hurry because you had a kid waiting on you to pick up. And I think if we think about our own mental health, we should also extend the empathy to others.
No, you're right.